Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to Screen Orb. Contrary to what box office numbers might suggest, movie making is not a sound profession. Making a film requires an enormous investment of time, resources, and manpower. And if an audience doesn't care for a film, it can mean lifelong disaster for people involved. For that reason, studios get protective of the products they deliver, and while they want a director to make a good movie, the studio suits also want to ensure a return on their investment. That can prove problematic for directors unwilling to communicate or cooperate with a studio, or for a studio that hires a filmmaker with a vision different from their own. Hollywood has a long and unfortunate history of taking films out of the hands of directors to retool in the name of the commercialism. Sometimes tinkering works, but other times it ruins potential masterpieces. Take these examples. Each had a noted director at the helm with a very specific vision. Nevertheless, the studio seized each one in the name of business and oftentimes ruined a good film in the process, with reports continuing to surface about how Warner Brothers changed Suicide Squad in the weeks leading up to the release, or how Disney has mandated an overhaul on Rogue One. Today we have for you top 6 movies ruined by studio interference. Number 1. Killing Them Softly. Andrew Dominik is not a very familiar name, and neither is his masterpiece The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. The Brad Pitt, Casey Affleck starrer is considered to be the best Western since 1992 classic Unforgiven. You can imagine how much critics and enthusiasts expected of Dominik's next feature film, Killing Them Softly, that came after a 5-year break in 2012. Though the movie was a great entry to the latest crime following an old school approach, it wasn't very successful at conveying its dig at the global economical crisis. The film adopts an inventive way of implying that though the lives of its crime world, but fails at one stage, the runtime. Producers apparently cut an hour of footage, and this may explain why the film fails at exploring its characters and feels rushed. Number 2. Alien 3. Also known as the mother of all nightmare studio recuts, the problems surrounding Alien 3 have become the stuff of legend. After years in development, Fox greenlit the film with Vincent Ward signed to write and direct. Ward envisioned a film of surreal images with Ripley and the xenomorph landing on a wooden planet populated by monks. When Fox didn't rein in some of the more outlandish qualities until the 11th hour, Ward balked and subsequently found himself out of a job. David Fincher, who had never before directed a film, came aboard to direct a reworked story reset in a mining colony full of convicts. Fincher and the producers battled non-stop, in part because of an unfinished script and in part because of the director's arrogance. Fincher refused to follow the studio mandates regarding schedule and budget. Fox eventually shut down the film to work on remaining story problems, later insisting on extensive reshoots that would alter the story. Fincher departed the film during editing, and theoretical release is a muddled, nihilistic nightmare devoid of any real thrills or scares. For fans, Alien 3 marks a spot where the entire franchise went off the rails, and the movie did only middling business. The so-called assembly cut, which more closely reflects Fincher's vision, has since become the defining cut of the movie, suggesting that Fox might have done well to let Fincher complete his movie. Number 3. Cleopatra. It was at the time the most expensive movie in history. Expectations were through the roof for the 20th Century Fox. There were elaborate sets unlike anything ever seen, an epic tale with an even more epic runtime, and megastars Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. Naturally, with such a big budget, there were studio fingerprints all over it. Forget the fact that the affair between Burton and Taylor caused so much of the drama on set because the movie itself had all sorts of issues behind the scenes. Originally scheduled to be 2 installments, Cleopatra instead ended up as a 3-hour mess of a movie after Fox made all sorts of firings in the production department. Editing out hours of content and changing producers at will created a lopsided and still overlong film that nearly bankrupted them. And this was despite All About Eve and A Letter to Three Wives director Joseph L. Mankiewicz being at the helm. He was long established and had done justice to Julius Caesar a decade before. He was handed the reins only after Ruben Mamoulian had been taken off the project. One of many times Fox took matters into their own hands. What came of it was a production that, if adjusted for inflation, would be north of $340 million today. Number 4. Robocop 2014. What's the best way to remake an 80s sci-fi cult classic? One with extravagant violence, biting satire, and one of their better directors of his time? Not sure, but it doesn't involve making a diluted and meaningless mainstream movie with none of the originals got. And that's exactly what Sony and MGM did. Instead of branching out to a fresh but still wickedly satirical version, director Jose Padilla had in mind, the distributors rejected most of his ideas. Even after the failures of 2 sequels in the early 90s, they thought a more cookie-cutter approach would actually work. It got to the point where Padilla described working on the project as hell because he had to fight so hard to keep any of his vision in the movie. 3 different writers were credited to the project, 2 of which were Edward Newmere and Michael Miner, who scripted the original movie. Even with them on board, this film went through several rewrites and the departure of Hugh Laurie, the would-be villain. In the end, we got what many expected, a sleeker and more up-to-date movie with no originality or bite to it, even with talent like Gary Oldman, Michael Keaton, and Jackie Earle Haley. This film went dead inside. Taking even more from the style of the original was the fact that they toned everything down. MGM wanted the PG-13 rating to maximize profit in a time where they were struggling to stay afloat. Sony wasn't doing too hot for itself either at the time, critically or financially, and has still yet to come out of its funk. Number 5. Fantastic Four. Speaking of Fox, a similar fiasco to the Alien 3 debacle transpired in 2015 with the studio's hasty reboot of Fantastic Four. Acclaimed indie director Josh Trank signed on to direct, and problems broke out from the start. The studio mandated the casting of certain actors over Trank's objections, and reports soon surfaced of Trank's strange behavior on set. After viewing an assembly cut, Fox ordered changes over the director's objections. Producer Simon Kinberg stepped in to write and direct extensive reshoots, which heavily altered the plot of the film. Trank made his protest public, tweeting one day before the film opened that his version was far superior, though it was one that would likely never see the light of day. Fantastic Four bombed in theaters in spectacular fashion, displacing Batman and Robin as the nadir of the modern comic book movie genre. Sources inside the studio have since praised Trank's version, which remains unseen, according to reports and judging by reshoots, easily spotted thanks to actress Kate Mara's wig. The new scenes added more humor and a lighter tone, in hopes of steering the film in the direction of the cartoonish Marvel films. Trank's version featured a darker, more brooding take on the story. Fox may have thought they'd save the day by taking the movie away from Trank, but in the end, their recruit just cut their own throats. Number 6. Suicide Squad. David Ayer's Suicide Squad arrived in theaters, opening to a huge box office receipts thanks to clever marketing and an audience eager to see a film centered around a group of villains. Just prior to the opening, however, stories began to emerge about behind-the-scenes drama that had plagued the film in post-production. Warner Brothers Studio, in response to criticism surrounding their earlier release Batman vs Superman, had apparently feared Suicide Squad would turn off audiences with its dark tone. The studio ordered extensive reshoots to add more humor and reduce the amount of violence in the film. After viewing Ayer's preferred cut, the studio panicked again, this time framing out final edit duties to marketing company Trailer Park to restructure the film. After screening both Ayer's and Trailer Park's edits, the director and the studio assembled a compromise edit, which unfortunately compromised the tone of the film and clarity of the story. The theoretical release, while not god-awful, suffers from a lack of focus and a somewhat confusing plot. Though Warner Brothers made a killing opening weekend, early statistical analysts suggest a huge drop-off in the second week, indicating that the studio might have been better off letting Ayer complete the film as he intended. This brings us to the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our videos in the future. Also guys, please do check out one of the 2 videos you're seeing on screen right now. With that said, I'll see you in the next video.